My name is Sebastian van As, and I come all the way from Cape Town. I would like to thank MSF for inviting me, and especially Edward, Elizabeth, and Nausheen, who were in contact with me. It's quite daunting to be in front of all of you. I'm a pediatric trauma surgeon for almost 30 years now, and I often felt very lonely because I'm alone in the hospital in the province promoting trauma for kids. But if I'm here in this room, I've spoken to people from the entire world, all of them with a passion for trauma in children, so that's very heartwarming. Let me see here. So I come from Cape Town, which I think most of you haven't been to. And it's a pity because it's the most beautiful city in the world. We've got a Table Mountain. I climb that every week on Sunday morning. It's 1 kilometer high. And for the people who haven't been, go there. It's been chosen the best tourist destination for at least 8 times, and the best tourist destination in the world. So I talk a little bit about pediatric trauma, the context of it, especially for low and middle income countries, and then the importance of prevention of trauma. If you look at the Millennium Development Goals, I'm from that age that I can still remember them. They were, I think, created in the 1990s. It was to reduce childhood mortality, but we haven't done a good job. And I would like to just give you a very quick overview of what I think are the true childhood traumas of our time. And then the second part of my presentation, what we can do to make it better for children. So what are the true childhood traumas? So we have to look for the evidence. I hope you can all relate to that. So you look at data, not at statistics only. So childhood injuries is a really very big thing, and it's a global problem. It's not in one country or another, it's in all countries. And if you look at Africa is in the south, but there is no reason to put the south at the bottom of the page. So this is a map of Africa, how I think it should be. Africa should be on top. And also the normal maps you see, they shrink the countries towards the equator, and they expand the ones towards the poles. So this is a true surface comparison of the countries. So you can see that Africa dwarfs Europe. Europe is sort of, you can hardly see it at the bottom of the page. So we've got 1.4 billion people estimated, of course, but what is interesting is that it's the only continent in which there are more children than adults. South Africa is a little bit different. We've got about 60 million people, of which 20 million are children, and about 500,000 are disabled children. Now, if you look at the data of children dying from injuries, you can see, if you look at this graph, South Africa is doing very bad. It's completely there on the right. And the chance of a child growing up in South Africa to die from an injury is almost 10 times the chance that the child dies from an injury in Germany, which is completely on the left side. Now, if we look at what type of children, which are the children who are more vulnerable. So this, first of all, a lot of media attention goes to violence against children, but if you look at these two columns, you can see that injuries is a much bigger killer than violence. And if you look at the children who are the most vulnerable, you see these are the red ones, they are the children under the age of 5. So they are the very young, small children who are the most vulnerable for accidents and injuries. Now, why is that so? Now, my theory is that children up to the age of 8, they are neurodevelopmentally immature, and they cannot protect themselves. We, as adults, we have to do that for them. So if a child gets an injury, it's not an accident, it is a neglect from the caretaker or from the parent. So that may be a little bit tough to swallow, but I really think that is so. If you look in the literature talks about accidental and non-accidental, so violence and accidents. But I think that's a wrong assessment. I think we should put all the children under the age of 6 who are in an accident, we must call that non-accidental because there was neglect. The parents and the caretakers did not do their job. According to the WHO, 3 of the top 5 killers of children are injury related. So this is a map from World Mapper, and I hate statistics. So this map, World Mapper is a very interesting map. It expands or shrinks a country looking at a particular item. So this is a map of where the children in the world are dying, and you can immediately see where are the children dying. They are dying in Africa and in India. These are the most vulnerable countries. Now, why is that so? It's also simple demographics. The demographics on the left is in a developing country. There's a very high mortality, so the number of children under the age of 5 is big, and then because they die, the number of children between the age of 5 and 10 is much smaller. So it becomes smaller and smaller, and there's a very small group of adults available to look after all the kids. If you compare that to the developed world, America or Europe, there is very little mortality, and there's far more adults available to look after the children. Now, if you look at the number of children, I'm from a tiny country which is there in the north, it's from Holland. So that country has got more doctors than in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. So that is how unfair it is divided. So Africa, where the mortality was so big, you remember the previous slide with the balloon. So what are children dying from? They're dying from 3 main causes. So road traffic crashes is by far the biggest killer. Drowning, number 2, and burns, number 3. Of course, the death is only, it was related to in the previous presentations, it's only the tip of the iceberg. For every child who dies, there's people who are, children who are disabled, who spend long times in hospitals and have to attend. And this is just a few slides of children who I treated in my trauma unit. The effects of trauma was also mentioned before are not only physical. The detriment to children who've been in a major trauma for the rest of their life and their career is magnificent. Alcohol is a very big problem. In South Africa, it is estimated that 70% of all accidents and injuries is related to alcohol abuse. So that's mind-blowing. And in violence, it's even more. It's 80% of domestic violence is related to the abuse of alcohol. And alcohol abuse is very common in Cape Town, and it's the most common cause of children born with disabilities globally. And in spite of that fact, there is free alcohol advertising, which all children can see. There's a free sports sponsorship, which is, I think, a criminal event, because you associate a healthy body with alcohol, which is completely absurd, because alcohol is the worst drug of all drugs available. And young children are very vulnerable. They haven't developed, like us, a filter to see what is real and what is not real. So I think we could do far more. Car crashes. Africa has got problems with transport, but especially safety belt use is a low-hanging fruit for children. They shouldn't be dying because were not strapped up. We looked at the children coming to the hospital when they were in the car with injuries. And 86% was against the law, not restrained. So they were sitting in the car came to a sudden standstill, and then the child was fling out. So a child becomes like, if the child is thrown out, the biggest part goes first. So which is the biggest part? No matter what was the position of the child in the car, the biggest, heaviest part is the head. The head will go first as a bullet, break the window, so the glass goes in the face, and then you will hit the other car or the pavement. So it is a very big cause of death in children. So because 86% of children which we treated as patients were not restrained, we thought let's look what are the people going into the hospital premises. So that's parents of patients, but also staff who brings the children to a crash. So we just did an observational study at the entrance of the hospital, and 89% of people bringing a child to hospital did not restrain it. So remember, the biggest cause of death is road traffic crashes, and the second biggest after pedestrians is passengers. So people putting their child at risk, well, they of course want to save, to make it good for the child. And don't hold the baby on your lap. Many people think that the small baby, I saw a tiny little baby yesterday, and people think they can keep it safely on their lap. That's not possible. If the baby is 10 kilos and you drive 50 kilometers an hour and you come to a sudden standstill or in a collision, the child becomes 5, because of the acceleration, deceleration forces, the child becomes 500 kilos. No one, not even Mr. Universe, is able to keep that. So it's not going to work. So caring people strap their children in. So that's the first litmus test you can do in a country. And just to see the astronomical numbers, we talk about terrorists all the time, terrorist attacks. You stand in the queue, I came here via Ethiopia, standing in the queue for hours, checking my bags, because the people are scared of terrorists. The total number of people dying from terrorists is 5,000 per year. Armed conflict is 370,000. But now look at motor car crashes, 1.4 million. Massive, the biggest killer. Children in war, we've spoken and we've seen the horrific images, so I don't want to go into detail. But there are horrible conflicts. One important thing is I was also in Gaza, and these children were both injured not from fire, but just because there was no electricity. The mother was cooking in the dark, and the children fell or walked into the place and were injured indirectly. So it's not from weapons, but indirectly. Sudan, there is a horrible conflict. I was yesterday speaking to John from there. What is interesting is, if you look at civilian death, so not soldier death, civilian death, in the past it was like 50%. In the Second World War, because of indiscriminate bombing, it became 70%. But what is really crazy, now we've got advanced technology, so-called smart weapons, and look at the number of civilian deaths, 90%. So the weapons are not that smart. So what can we do to make it safer? We can do a lot. The vision of Child Safe, which I've been running for 2 decades, is to create a safer world for children. It was started by my predecessor, that was the first professor of pediatric surgery in the Southern Hemisphere. And he realized at the bottom, more operations are performed for accidents and injuries and trauma than for all other causes together. And he thought we must do something about it. We can't sit and wait. It's ethical not just to just only treat and sit in the hospital waiting for patients to arrive. We should be going out there and trying to prevent it. So we do research, education, and advocacy. So all of them are pointed to increase awareness of the vulnerability of children. We started a database in 1991. It's the biggest trauma surveillance system for children in the world. We see about 10,000 kids a year under the age of 12, so we've got an enormous wealth of data, and we published more than 100 scientific articles based on the evidence. This is just causes, a very simple draft. The red one is violence, all the green ones is accidents. Education, we've got a national, we promoted for a National Child Accident Prevention Month every August in South Africa. Child safety courses for teachers and parents. We've got a newsletter which we distribute online. We've got educational programs at schools. We supply life skills, curriculum materials for schools. And we also run media campaigns. Media, the journalists can be a big friend. They like stories with children. And last year, in excess of 30, we got in excess of more than 30 million rand. Child safety posters. South Africa is a country with 11 languages, and one picture often says more than 1,000 words. So what we did, we analyzed our database, and we looked at what are the most common injuries in the age group 0 to 6 months, 6 months to 1 year, and so forth. So we can show the parents who bring their child who had an injury, what are the most likely injuries for the other children. One example of a project we also did is Safe Travel to School. There was a horrific accident 15 years ago, and we decided we have to do something. So if you look at crashes with school buses, they can be due to infrastructure, poor transport systems and vehicles which are not roadworthy. But if you look at the bottom, 80 to 90% is poor driving. So what we did, we developed a program focused on the driver and monitoring how is the driving via a cell phone, a tracker in the car, so we can see how fast the car accelerates, how often he quickly stops, how he cut corners, how many times he exceeds the speed limit, things like that. And then what we do, we track it, and every month we have a session with the driver and we say, listen, this is how you drove, this is now what you must not do and what you must do. So every 3 months we get all the drivers together, and the drivers who drove the best gets a cash prize, which is very important in South Africa. It's a poor country. And once a year, the best driver of all gets his own car and he can start his own business. So this is really, the number of taxis we were involved has grown dramatically. We've got now close to, this is an old slide, close to 2,000. And this is the spots in Cape Town where we have. And this is the national award, so you can see how many people are involved. All these guys are taxi drivers. If you look at this graph, the different colored lines is bad driving. So the higher, the worse the driving. And the taxi drivers started as these colored lines, and then over the course of the 2 years, they all became much, much better. And the gray ones is the general public, is the people we monitor for other reasons. So our taxi drivers drive much safer than the general public. So there were no injuries or deaths during the program. They drive better and they continue to improve. We also do advocacy. We were in Parliament for various things, or whatever we think is dangerous for children, we make a point. We run child safety seminars in conferences, and we also presented a child-friendly submission to Parliament for the new firearm bill. In South Africa there was a lot of firearms, like in the United States. And in 2001 we performed the first PowerPoint presentation in South Africa Parliament, and we showed them pictures of children who were shot. So the parliamentarians, they were blown over, and they immediately accepted a very tight law, and it dropped the number of children being shot by 70% in a very short time. And not only children, also adults. If you look at the green line, the total number of adult people shot and died, that also decreased by about 50%. So we often hear about vaccines, and it's been a hot debate, especially since Corona, but where is child accident prevention? Prevention is so much better than cure. It is, first of all, for the politicians, it's much cheaper, far less suffering, and far less death. It's impossible to prevent the abuse of children directly, but research has shown that the risk factors for children to die from accidents and violence, many of the risk factors are very similar. So if you make the society safer for children so that they have less accidents, then automatically you will see that you drop the violence also. So our world is created mainly by adults for adults, and children often get a very, very tough, hard deal because they are not sitting in the room. So child safety starts with all of us, and it's really a task for all of us. Kids under the age of 8 cannot look after their own safety. And I would like to leave you with a thought of probably one of the one of the biggest statesmen who came from Africa, Nelson Mandela. He says, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. And I thank you for your attention.